In less than 2 weeks, the Federal Communication Commission, or FCC, will be tasked with an important decision, whether to end net neutrality or not. This decision could potentially affect how Americans live their day-to-day lives, and not in a good way. The internet is an integral part of virtually everyone's lives. It is so often used that many people consider the internet a utility such as water and food because of its broad and frequent use amongst Americans. Therefore, the internet is deeply rooted into American culture and the way that people communicate. Unfortunately, without net neutrality, the internet will never be the same. In fact, the elimination of net neutrality would be detrimental to the lives of Americans. First, we must ask ourselves what net neutrality is. Net neutrality is the principle that all data on the internet is treated equally. In our day-to-day lives, it means that Facebook is no greater than Spotify and that Spotify is no greater than Gmail, and so on. Every website is treated as equal regardless of content. As long as someone has an internet service provider or ISP, they are not restricted on what websites they can see because all websites are seen as equal, or in other words, neutral. If net neutrality is taken away, it changes things. Net neutrality quite literally comes with a price. Right now, Americans pay for the internet with a monthly flat rate. According to high-speed internet, in the United States, the average internet connection is 11.4 megabytes per second, which costs in the range of $34.99 to $41.95 per month. This is already a hefty price with net neutrality, but the price would be even greater without it. Essentially, without net neutrality, people would have to pay for the website that they use through different packages. The United States would most likely pick up a similar internet system to Portugal, a country without net neutrality. An article by Business Insider explains this concept. Mio, a large Portuguese wireless carrier, offers its users 5 packages that cost the equivalent of about $8.25 each. One includes email services like Gmail and Yahoo Mail, while another has YouTube and Netflix. Music apps such as Spotify, SoundCloud, and Google Play Music, messaging apps like WhatsApp, Skype, and FaceTime, and social media sites round out the available packages. Needless to say, these prices would add up quickly. For low-income families that are struggling to pay for the internet as it is, this is not good news. Families like this would not be able to afford all the packages. This could potentially disable their knowledge. For example, if a family could not pay for a social media package in a country where 65% of adults in the US use social media, they could be at a serious knowledgeable disadvantage. Social media is a modern hub of knowledge where all people share their perspectives and ideas. Without the ability to access these types of websites, an entire family would be ignorant about the world, not by choice, but because of cost. That is anything but fair. Not only that, the abandonment of net neutrality would leave competitors of large companies struggling. When consumers buy these packages comprised of large companies, smaller companies are left in the dust to fend for themselves. For example, if you love watching television shows, but the video bundle you pay for only carries Netflix, you will be less likely to pay more money to access other video streaming sites such as Hulu. All the power would be in the ISP's hands, and that's a dangerous world to live in. This puts smaller companies at a disadvantage, especially in a country where small businesses are the backbone of the economy. The creation of this two-tier system where big companies are on top and smaller companies are forced to survive on their own would be harmful. The move would specifically hurt the economy and go to the extent of hindering innovation. In fact, the American Civil Liberties Union said, net neutrality spurred innovation and commerce by preventing large companies from leveraging market power to stifle competition from smaller dynamic web innovators. Portugal, a country that abandoned net neutrality as of last year, is already feeling the effects of this two-tier system. The country follows the net neutrality guidelines put forth by the European Union or the EU. Under these guidelines, Portugal has control of zero rating, or the act of imposing caps on their content and their competitors' content. In just 1 year, the ISPs in Portugal have taken control. So ISPs in Portugal have already started taking advantage of zero rating in a way that eerily echoes the warnings net neutrality advocates have been making for years. This is frightening because big companies taking advantage of their smaller counterparts is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Americans should feel threatened because if net neutrality leaves, The US is next in line to feel those effects. Essentially, the dissipation of net neutrality could have adverse effects on the power dynamic of the business world as we know it. Without net neutrality, the control of the internet is in the hands of ISPs and not the people. ISPs can control what people see and how much they have to pay. In the past, internet providers have had a more laissez-faire or hands-off approach to the internet, but now they can likely censor various aspects of it. Without net neutrality, cable and phone companies could carve the internet into fast and slow lanes. An ISP could slow down its competitors' content or block political opinions it disagreed with. ISPs could charge extra fees to the few content companies that could afford to pay for preferential treatment, relegating everyone else to a slower tier of system. This would destroy the open internet. When the internet is censored, people are unable to see the complete truth of an issue. Everything they see will have some sort of bias. Usually this bias will be in the favor of the ISP. With no net neutrality, the internet is not truly a free internet because there is a lack of personal independence. Big ISP corporations get to make the shots and determine what their customers see. This essentially restricts people's freedom of speech. Americans use the internet as a place to exercise their freedom of speech. As a matter of fact, the Supreme Court recently observed internet platforms can provide perhaps the most powerful mechanism available to a private citizen to make his or her voice heard. Without the ability to speak freely on the internet, a person loses his or her voice. The internet platforms enables people to communicate their thoughts to a wide audience and have their thoughts acknowledged. People can gain support and opposition to their ideas with it. But without the internet, their thoughts remain stagnant. The internet is essentially a sounding board for change. Furthermore, digital activism through social media is dependent on net neutrality. Without the ability to speak freely on the internet, profound institutional change is impossible. Many social activism organizations utilize social media to organize their movements. The Black Lives Matter movement used Twitter to stimulate a national conversation about race. Organizers of women's marches used Facebook and Twitter to coordinate different marches and discuss their beliefs on equality. And most recently, we've seen the #MeToo movement take the Twitter world by storm. In this ongoing movement, women shared that they were sexually harassed by tweeting #MeToo. The result of this movement was far-reaching as it connected victims of sexual assault and affected many different industries. Due to sexual harassment allegations, movie producer Harvey Weinstein was let go by his company, Senator Al Franken resigned from Congress, comedian Louis C.K. lost all his television and movie deals, anchor Matt Lauer was released from NBC, and actor Kevin Spacey was fired from his television show. Now, what's impressive about this movement is that all the institutional change that occurred initially stemmed from a simple tweet. The movement would not be as enigmatic without social media. In fact, it may not have even happened. Broadly speaking, all these movements were able to bring about awareness and eventually change because of the freedom of speech on social media. Without this innate freedom, these movements may have never gotten off the ground or garnered national support. A free internet is a powerful thing. It is a place where not only ideas that change an entire community can be spread, but a place where these ideas should be spread. Ultimately, the desertion of net neutrality would be one of the first modern technological tragedies. The way we communicate and access knowledge in this country would never be the same. If the FCC were to vote to eliminate net neutrality, the effects would be economically harmful to the internet payer and the overall economy as it undermines small business. The control of the web's content would go directly to internet service providers. Not to mention the sense of innovation and community formed through social media platforms would come to a halt. A vote against net neutrality is a vote against American interaction and understanding. Unfortunately, this might not be the only threat to free media in the upcoming years. Under the current administration of President Donald Trump, there has been an ongoing war against media. The loss of net neutrality may be the first casualty in this media targeting war. Sadly, there are presumably more battles to go. Although the future is bleak, there is still a morsel of hope in preserving net neutrality. To help fight for net neutrality, you can visit battleforthenet.com or write/call your congressman and demand change. Because once net neutrality is gone, it will never come back. But there is still time right now. The internet deserves to be free and fair. And now it's time to fight for that right.